Welcome to Heald Law Academy, the place to understand how to grow and protect your business. Today I'm with Caroline Wilton, who's the partner heading up the Commercial Property Department at Heald Solicitors LLP. And today we're going to find out about why signing a licence to occupy is not always what it seems. Welcome, Caroline.
Thank you.
Now, I have no idea of the difference. Licence, lease, what are they? Who needs them?
Leases and licences are fundamental parts of any commercial property. The problem is that licences sound great, but in practice they quite often don't deliver. Right. The aim of a licence is nice, sweet, simple, easy in, easy out, keep the costs down, everybody happy. The problem is that a licence is quite often actually a lease, and that's where the trouble starts.
But how would someone start off with a licence and end up with a lease? How would they be confused? What would happen there?
It's because people don't necessarily understand the concept behind what a lease is. Anybody who grants somebody exclusive occupation of a property or part of a property, even a room, they will have granted a lease, and it doesn't matter whether or not they've called it a licence. The whole point is it is a lease and therefore will be governed by the Landlord and Tenant Act.
Okay, Caroline, so let's say one or both parties weren't happy. Would they be able to pull out?
That depends on what exactly they've signed up to. Okay. If it is a genuine licence, which means, and a classic example is hot desking. If you have got somebody coming in using one desk one day, one desk another day, that's probably a licence, and that can be ended relatively easily. It does, of course, all depend on the wording of the agreement. If, however, you have a lease, then the tenant is probably sitting pretty, because people who sign up to licences thinking that they're licences don't go through the procedure under the 1954 Act that allows them to make the tenant leave at the end of that lease. So a classic example would be somebody goes in for 9 months on a licence. At the end of that time, they're quite happy where they are. Unfortunately, the landlord might think, I could get better rent with somebody else, or I'm not particularly happy letting out a little bit, or I want to sell my property. How do I get rid of this person under a licence? The tenant at that the licensee, the occupier at that stage, could sit tight and say, well, here I am, I have exclusive possession, I have a tenancy, you'll have to go through the statutory requirements to get me out, or pay me more.
Okay. So what could somebody do to minimise these risks? Let's say the landlord, they want their tenant out, they can't get the tenant out. What can they do?
Well, the first thing is, don't let anybody into occupation of any part of your property without having a proper signed agreement up. If you don't want them there at the end of the agreed period, you have to, pretty much certainly, you have to have a lease and not a licence. And that does involve a little bit more work to begin with, but ultimately it's a lot safer in the long run.
Okay, so on the flip side then, let's say the tenant's grown their business, perhaps they didn't intend to stay there all that long in the beginning, but they've got a business, it's established, and they want to stay. Are there any rights that they have?
The best thing to do is probably have a discussion with the landlord first and come up with some kind of commercial, sensible solution. If that's not possible, then they will have to rely on their rights under the 54 Act. And ultimately that could involve slightly less pleasant conversations with the landlord, who would have to use the statutory procedure. It obviously depends on the facts of each case as to how strong the position the tenant would be, but at very least there will be a delaying tactic that could be used. And that, of course, could be used to the tenant's advantage, and the landlord may find that they will have to incentivise the tenant to leave by some form of payment.
Thanks very much, Caroline.
Pleasure.
Well, that's it for now. Remember to subscribe to our videos, news and events, and feel free to use our website or social media to ask any of our legal experts any questions you may have about commercial law. Bye for now.